I'm about to share something that might make you uncomfortable, but it could be the wake-up call that changes your outlook. For the past decade, we've been sold the lie that being busy equals being productive, that saying yes to everything makes us valuable. But recent studies reveal that 82% of workers are experiencing burnout, with Gen Z and millennials hitting the highest levels of exhaustion. The people who are thriving aren't the ones doing more. They're the ones who've learned to focus on their why, as Simon Sinek teaches us, and discovered the power of strategic self-focus. And it starts with understanding one fundamental truth about what's hijacking your attention every single day. The digital quicksand that's swallowing your soul. Your phone has become a weapon against your own mind. In 2025, 69% of remote employees report digital tool burnout, and it's not hard to understand why. Every notification sound triggers a small hit of dopamine in your brain. This chemical reward system evolved to help our ancestors survive by making them pay attention to important changes in their environment. But now that same system keeps you trapped in a cycle where you crave the next ping, the next like, the next update. Your brain literally adapts to expect these constant interruptions, making sustained attention feel uncomfortable and difficult. When you switch from checking your email to scrolling social media to responding to a text message, you're not just moving between tasks. You're asking your brain to completely restructure its focus multiple times per minute. This constant switching creates what researchers identify as attention residue. Part of your mental energy remains stuck on the previous task, even after you've moved to something new. Think about how your smartphone pinging disrupts your ability to fall asleep at night. Research shows that 74% of people report that sleep affects their mental health, and this fragmented attention follows the same pattern throughout your waking hours. The deeper parts of yourself, the parts that hold your values and authentic desires, require sustained attention to access. Attention residue acts like static that drowns out these quieter, but more important signals. Social media platforms employ teams of neuroscientists and behavioral economists whose entire job is keeping you externally focused. The infinite scroll wasn't designed by accident. The way your feed shows you content that triggers comparison, envy, or outrage isn't a glitch. These features exist because platforms profit when you stay engaged, and you stay engaged when you're looking outside yourself for validation, information, or emotional stimulation. The algorithm learns that you're more likely to engage with content that makes you feel inadequate or anxious about missing out. It feeds you carefully curated glimpses into other people's lives, designed to make you question your own choices and priorities. This external focus becomes addictive because it temporarily relieves the discomfort of looking inward, but it also prevents you from developing the internal compass you need to navigate your own life. Research published in 2025 shows a direct correlation between hours spent on connected devices and reported levels of anxiety and life dissatisfaction. People who spend more than 4 hours daily on smartphones and social media report feeling 40% less satisfied with their lives compared to those who limit their usage to under 2 hours. The correlation holds true across age groups, income levels, and geographic locations. What makes this particularly concerning is that constant connectivity doesn't just make you anxious in the moment. It trains your nervous system to expect stimulation, making ordinary moments feel boring or uncomfortable. The quiet spaces where self-reflection happens naturally start feeling like voids that need to be filled. You lose the ability to sit with your own thoughts without reaching for external input. The people achieving remarkable things in 2025 understand something most people miss. They recognize that attention is their most valuable resource, and they guard it accordingly. They create digital boundaries not to be antisocial, but to preserve the mental space where their best thinking happens. They schedule specific times for checking messages and social media, rather than allowing these activities to interrupt their focus throughout the day. These high performers often describe a phenomenon that seems counterintuitive. The less connected they are to their devices, the more connected they feel to the people and work that matter most to them. They can have deeper conversations because their attention isn't fragmented. They can pursue long-term goals because they're not constantly distracted by short-term stimulations. They can make decisions based on their own values, rather than reacting to whatever external pressure feels most urgent. The paradox of our current moment is striking. We have access to more information, more connection, and more opportunities for communication than any generation in human history. Yet surveys consistently show that people feel more isolated, more anxious, and more disconnected from their sense of purpose than previous generations. The tools designed to connect us have actually created barriers between us and the parts of ourselves that matter most. Breaking free from digital quicksand requires recognizing that your phone and social media apps are designed to capture and monetize your attention. Every feature, every notification, every algorithm update serves the goal of keeping you engaged with external content rather than focused on your internal development. Understanding this isn't about becoming a technology pessimist. It's about becoming a conscious consumer of digital tools rather than their unconscious victim. The process starts with creating small pockets of unconnected time throughout your day. This might mean keeping your phone in another room during meals, or setting specific hours where you don't check any devices. Initially, this will feel uncomfortable because your brain has adapted to expect constant stimulation. But within weeks, you'll notice that the quiet spaces start feeling natural again rather than empty. During these disconnected periods, pay attention to what thoughts and feelings arise without external input. Notice what concerns, ideas, or desires surface when you're not immediately reaching for distraction. These moments of internal awareness are where you begin to reconnect with your authentic self, rather than the version of yourself that reacts to whatever external stimulus feels most urgent. The goal isn't to eliminate technology from your life entirely. Digital tools can enhance your ability to focus on yourself when used intentionally. The goal is to shift from being reactive to being intentional about when and how you engage with these tools. This means choosing specific times to check messages, rather than allowing notifications to interrupt your focus throughout the day. Guard your attention as your most valuable resource. Try one notification-free hour, right now, and notice what happens when your mind isn't constantly pulled in different directions. The people thriving in 2025 aren't the most connected online. They're the most connected to themselves. But even when you create these digital boundaries, you'll discover something unexpected about the very organ that's supposed to help you succeed. Why your brain is wired to sabotage your success. Your brain is actively working against your success, and it's not your fault. The World Health Organization predicts that mental health disorders will affect half the world's population. Yet understanding your purpose remains one of the strongest predictors of resilience. Your neural wiring creates patterns that keep you seeking validation outside yourself. But recognizing these patterns is the first step toward redirecting them. The notification pings from your devices hijack your brain's reward system in ways that cost the global economy $322 billion annually in lost productivity, according to WHO research. Every time someone likes your post, comments on your content, or validates your opinion, your brain releases dopamine in exactly the same way it would respond to any other reward. Your neural pathways can't distinguish between validation that actually serves your well-being and validation that simply feels good in the moment. This creates what neuroscientists call a variable reward schedule, the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. You never know when the next hit of approval will come, so your brain stays alert and seeking. The comparison trap emerges from this same wiring. Every time you scroll through your feed, your brain automatically evaluates your life against what you're seeing. This isn't a conscious choice you're making. It's an automatic process that now compares you to thousands of people showing only their best moments. Social media platforms exploit this by presenting carefully curated versions of other people's lives designed to trigger comparison and competition. Your brain experiences this as constant evidence that you're falling behind in some social ranking. Fear of missing out represents the modern expression of this same mechanism. Social media amplifies this fear by creating the illusion that exciting, important, or valuable experiences are happening constantly without you. Understanding why willpower alone fails to overcome these patterns requires recognizing how deeply embedded they are in your neural architecture. These aren't bad habits you've developed through poor choices. They're responses to stimuli your brain wasn't designed to handle. Trying to overcome them through willpower alone is like trying to stop your heart from beating through concentrated effort. The constant pursuit of external validation creates what researchers identify as a psychological dependency. Your brain adapts to expect regular doses of social approval, and when those doses decrease, you experience withdrawal symptoms including anxiety, restlessness, and compulsive checking behaviors. This biological reality explains why people often feel genuinely distressed when their posts don't receive expected levels of engagement, or when they're excluded from social activities. Neuroplasticity offers the pathway to rewiring these systems for success. Your brain retains the ability to form new neural connections throughout your life, which means you can literally rebuild the pathways that determine how you process validation and self-worth. Research shows that mental health training reduces stigma by 10 points, and focusing on your why connects directly to this stigma reduction by building internal validation systems. Successful people have learned to work with their brains' wiring rather than fighting against it. They recognize that the drive for social connection and approval is natural and necessary, but they redirect it toward relationships and achievements that actually serve their long-term goals. Instead of seeking validation from strangers on social media, they build relationships with mentors, collaborators, and communities aligned with their values and objectives. These high performers often describe a process of gradually shifting their reward systems from external to internal sources. They practice celebrating small wins that nobody else notices, finding satisfaction in progress rather than recognition, and developing confidence based on their own standards rather than other people's opinions. This isn't about becoming antisocial or indifferent to others' perspectives. It's about building a foundation of self-worth that doesn't collapse when external validation is unavailable. The difference between healthy self-awareness and destructive self-obsession lies in the direction of focus. Healthy self-awareness involves understanding your strengths, values, and motivations so you can make choices aligned with your authentic goals. Destructive self-obsession involves constant self-criticism, rumination about perceived flaws, and comparing your internal experience to others' external presentations. One builds confidence and capability, while the other undermines both. People who successfully redirect their validation-seeking develop what psychologists call intrinsic motivation. They pursue goals because the activities themselves are meaningful and satisfying, not because achieving those goals will impress others. This shift often begins with small experiments in internal validation, like pursuing a hobby nobody knows about or setting private goals that don't get shared on social media. The process isn't about eliminating your need for social connection or approval. Those needs serve important functions. It's about becoming conscious of how modern technology exploits these systems and making intentional choices about when and how you engage with external validation. Understanding your brain's programming is the key to reprogramming it for authentic success, rather than artificial success that comes from impressing people who don't actually know or care about you. The most powerful question you can ask yourself right now is simple but transformative. What am I chasing and why? This question cuts through the noise of external expectations and social pressure to reveal what actually drives you. When you can answer this honestly, you begin to see how much of your energy has been directed toward goals that don't actually serve your deeper purpose. But here's where most people get stuck. They assume that once they understand their why, they need to do more, achieve more, optimize more. This leads to an uncomfortable truth about how we approach success in the modern world. The productivity paradox that's keeping you stuck. The reality is that 82% of workers are at risk of burnout. Yet recent Bureau of Labor Statistics data shows labor productivity grew only 1.5% in Q4 2024, while hourly compensation increased 3.8%. This mismatch reveals the core issue. You're working harder, but achieving less meaningful results. You're living in the middle of what researchers call the productivity paradox, where the more tools, techniques, and optimization strategies you use, the further you drift from actual achievement. The productivity industry has become a multi-billion-dollar machine that profits from your feeling inadequate about your output. Every day you're bombarded with new apps, methodologies, and life hacks promising to unlock your potential and maximize your efficiency. You download the latest task management software, implement the newest time-blocking technique, and reorganize your workspace according to the latest expert advice. But these solutions treat symptoms rather than causes, adding layers of complexity to your life rather than creating the simplicity that genuine productivity requires. Remote workers face a particularly stark version of this paradox. Despite having 20% higher burnout risk than their office counterparts, they consistently work longer hours and report feeling less accomplished. The flexibility that was supposed to improve work-life balance has instead created an always-on mentality where the boundaries between productivity and presence have completely dissolved. You optimize your home office setup, install productivity apps, and create elaborate systems for managing your time, yet you feel more scattered and less effective than ever. This obsession with optimization creates what psychologists identify as productivity theater. You spend more time managing your productivity systems than actually producing meaningful work. You color-code your calendar, categorize your tasks into urgent and important quadrants, and track your habits with elaborate spreadsheets. These activities feel productive because they require effort and attention, but they consume the mental energy you need for the work that actually moves your life forward. The difference between being busy and being effective becomes clear when you examine how high performers actually structure their days. Instead of filling every available minute with activity, they create large blocks of uninterrupted time for their most important work. They say no to meetings that don't align with their core objectives, even when saying no feels uncomfortable or potentially offensive. They focus on completing fewer tasks at a higher level of quality rather than checking numerous items off their lists. DHR Global Research reveals that burnout costs the global economy $322 billion annually, highlighting the real-world impact of this productivity paradox. Organizations are paying massive costs for employees who appear busy but aren't producing meaningful results. The constant switching between tasks, responding to notifications, and managing productivity systems creates the illusion of work without the substance of achievement. Hustle culture has disconnected you from the deeper satisfaction that comes from meaningful work. The glorification of 18-hour workdays and sleep deprivation creates a competitive environment where exhaustion becomes a badge of honor rather than a warning sign. This mentality treats your life like a machine that can be optimized for maximum output without considering the human cost of constant acceleration. You lose connection to the reasons you started working in the first place, turning your career into an endurance contest rather than a vehicle for creating value. The psychological concept of effort justification explains why you mistake busyness for progress. When you invest significant time and energy into activities, your brain automatically assigns them importance to justify the investment. This cognitive bias prevents you from objectively evaluating whether your efforts are producing meaningful results. You continue pursuing strategies that feel demanding rather than questioning whether they're actually effective. Your brain interprets the physical and mental fatigue from constant activity as evidence of productive work. The exhaustion you feel after responding to dozens of emails, attending back-to-back meetings, and switching between multiple projects creates the illusion that you've accomplished something significant. But this fatigue often results from inefficient mental processing rather than meaningful output. You're confusing the feeling of being productive with actually being productive. Multitasking represents one of the most destructive productivity myths of our time. Research shows that attempting to handle multiple tasks simultaneously reduces cognitive performance by up to 40%. Your brain doesn't actually multitask. Instead, it rapidly switches attention between different activities, and each switch requires mental energy and time to refocus. The transition costs accumulate throughout your day, leaving you feeling drained without having given full attention to anything important. True productivity emerges from alignment rather than acceleration. Instead of trying to do more things faster, focus on ensuring that your activities serve your most important objectives. This requires understanding what outcomes you're actually trying to create rather than simply staying busy with whatever feels urgent. When your daily actions align with your core values and long-term goals, you experience a sense of flow and satisfaction that makes work feel energizing rather than draining. The most productive people focus on outcomes rather than activities. They measure success by the results they create rather than the hours they work or the tasks they complete. This outcome-focused approach requires regularly evaluating whether your current activities are moving you closer to your objectives or simply keeping you busy. It means having the courage to abandon projects that aren't producing meaningful results, even when you've already invested significant time and effort. Creating genuine productivity requires the discipline to protect your attention from the constant demands for immediate response. This means setting specific times for checking email rather than responding to messages throughout the day. It means scheduling focused work sessions without interruptions rather than trying to squeeze important tasks between other commitments. It means recognizing that your attention is your most valuable resource and guarding it accordingly. The secret to breaking free from the productivity paradox lies in shifting from doing more to doing what matters. This isn't about working less or lowering your standards. It's about applying your energy and attention to activities that create meaningful results, rather than scattering your efforts across numerous tasks that generate the feeling of productivity without the substance. When you align your daily actions with your deeper objectives, you discover that genuine productivity feels sustainable and satisfying rather than exhausting and overwhelming. But here's what happens when you finally break through this paradox and achieve the external markers of success you've been chasing. You might discover something unexpected about the relationship between achievement and fulfillment, the identity crisis hiding behind your success. Most people who achieve everything they thought they wanted experience a profound identity crisis when they reach their goals. The corner office, the six-figure salary, the recognition from peers, the social media following. They get it all and then ask themselves who they actually are underneath these accomplishments. This isn't failure. This is the natural consequence of building your identity around external achievements rather than internal understanding. Research from SHRM shows that 44% of US employees feel burned out. But what's more telling is that 42% worry their career will be impacted if they talk about mental health challenges. This statistic reveals something crucial about how we define success and self-worth in our current culture. We've created environments where appearing successful matters more than actually feeling fulfilled, where maintaining professional personas takes precedence over authentic self-expression. The achievements that took years to build become masks that hide who you actually are. You develop professional personas, social media personalities, and public identities that generate approval and advancement. But these external presentations often have little connection to your authentic thoughts, feelings, and desires. You become skilled at performing the version of yourself that succeeds in your environment, while your actual self remains unknown and undeveloped. This performance becomes so automatic that you lose track of where the mask ends and your authentic self begins. You make decisions based on what will maintain your image rather than what aligns with your values. You pursue opportunities that look impressive rather than those that feel meaningful. You develop relationships that serve your professional goals rather than ones that nourish your emotional needs. The success you achieve feels hollow because it belongs to the persona you've created rather than the person you actually are. Hedonic adaptation explains why external success doesn't create lasting fulfillment. Your brain is designed to return to baseline levels of satisfaction regardless of positive or negative changes in your circumstances. The promotion that seemed like it would solve all your problems provides temporary satisfaction before becoming your new normal. The recognition you worked years to achieve feels meaningful for a few weeks before you start craving the next level of acknowledgement. This psychological principle means that each external achievement provides diminishing returns on your investment of time and energy. You need increasingly impressive accomplishments to generate the same feelings of satisfaction and self-worth. This creates what researchers identify as the hedonic treadmill, where you're constantly pursuing the next goal without ever reaching lasting contentment. You achieve success but not fulfillment because fulfillment requires internal alignment rather than external validation. Societal definitions of success often conflict directly with personal values and purpose. Culture tells you that wealth, status, and recognition represent achievement, but these markers might have nothing to do with what actually matters to you. You might value creativity, connection, or contribution, but you pursue financial success because that's what your family, peers, and society recognize as valuable. This misalignment creates internal tension that no amount of external success can resolve. Research shows that people who achieve external success without internal alignment experience higher rates of depression, anxiety, and other mental health challenges. Their accomplishments feel meaningless because they don't reflect their authentic interests or values. They've invested years building lives that look successful from the outside, but feel empty from the inside. This disconnection between external achievement and internal satisfaction often leads to what psychologists call existential depression, a deep questioning of meaning and purpose that success can't answer. The difference between authentic achievement and performative achievement becomes crucial for understanding this crisis. Authentic achievement emerges from actions aligned with your core values and genuine interests. These accomplishments feel satisfying because they represent genuine expressions of who you are and what matters to you. Performative achievement, on the other hand, serves the goal of impressing others or meeting external expectations. These successes might advance your career or social standing, but they don't create lasting satisfaction because they don't reflect your authentic self. The silence around mental health struggles compounds this identity crisis. NOMI research reveals that only 13% of people tell their manager when they're suffering mentally. This statistic highlights how we've created professional environments where vulnerability is seen as weakness and authenticity is viewed as career suicide. When you can't express your genuine struggles or authentic self in the spaces where you spend most of your time, you become increasingly disconnected from who you actually are. Building authentic identity requires the courage to acknowledge when your external achievements don't align with your internal values. This process demands confronting the uncomfortable reality that much of what you've achieved might not reflect who you actually are or what you actually want. It requires distinguishing between goals you've adopted from external sources and ones that emerge from your authentic interests and values. Redefining success on your own terms requires extraordinary courage because it often means disappointing people whose approval you've worked years to earn. It might mean leaving prestigious positions for work that feels more meaningful but looks less impressive on paper.